Okay, so now we're live on both.
Wow, I heard the buzz part of that, so that's actually super epic. All right, Rachel. So I've been distracting everyone with
Yes,
my
I thank you
charm.
for the pre-show there, Wanda. Appreciate that. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Harmonics. And this episode is brought to you by Quantum Play Studios. We go live every Friday. We had a bit of a hiatus for a little bit as Miss Aria was traversing the realm for a little bit. We came back full force last week with a really interesting, I think, really potent episode about Scorpio season. And that goes into why we have chosen to cosplay as these very powerful, deep, magical beings, right? In terms of Scorpio season, right? Thematically, I am Dark Phoenix. This is a cosplay that I made myself as like a real cosplayer. I'm so proud of me. And I chose to be Dark Phoenix, right? Not White Phoenix or Phoenix, the green Phoenix version of Jean Grey. Jean Grey's got a lot of different costumes, but in getting ready for this, when going up against Arya, the headdress, right? The headpiece she's got on right now. Jean Grey's got a similar one that I like doing with body paint, but I'm working on like a real one. But that whole concept of, you know, making your like concentrating, having focus of your powers. Is there something to your headpiece, Wanda? Actually,
I do not know.
oh, okay. Does anyone know that actually? Oh, okay. We have people. Does anyone know about the headpieces? People don't even know necessarily about genes. Like, if you, I think it's supposed to focus psychic energy, but I'm not entirely sure. But
Right.
yeah, we decided to do these cosplays to explore themes of power because Scorpio is all about power. Do you want to add a bit more to that, my friend?
Yeah. So it's funny, right? Because like in the whole realm of superheroes, like this isn't like a physical manifestation of power in that super strength or like laser beams. It's psychic, it's mental, and even I think for Jean Grey, the power comes from her empathy and emotionality. And for Wanda, her power is entirely almost like battery charged with her emotions and her relationship to whatever her reality is. And so this is the power that I think we're kind of taught to bury in because it's not neat, it's not pretty, it's often like raw. And as the Dark Phoenix, like I'm sure you'll talk about this, it has it is it's the destructive power of creation, like that part of the
Yeah, the
cycle.
duality of it,
Right.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
like
So no,
yeah.
I'm so thrilled. All right. So should we any logistics on like
Let's see
TikTok
here.
and stuff like that?
Let's see. Okay, so we are doing things a little bit differently today. My good friend here has sent me my pre-production notes as far as we go. And just to
It's
let you
very
guys know
organized,
that
Wanda.
myself and Arya are also, I would say that we're very tuned in real life as well. So if you're interested in getting your own superhero readings, perspectives, ways of looking at the stars, and how you're interfacing with reality, we are here to help you out with that. So you can do that through our channels by following us, send us a message, all of that kind of stuff. If you are joining us on TikTok, please do send us gifts that helps to power saving the multiverse, as well as creating brand new types of entertainment and educational types of shows and ways of us going into the new world as the new media, right? Our way of sharing stories with each other. And so, yeah, we so ever appreciate any of those types of support. And yeah, any comments, questions, keep them coming, as well as we're going to have different sections on the way to address any of your questions, comments, concerns in the chat so that we keep things like lively and engaging. Anything that I missed there?
No, I think that's good.
Yay! Okay, shall we delve into segment one?
Yes. So
Yes.
I feel like this is a little bit of the realm of Jean, but before we get into it,
Yes.
why did you choose Dark Phoenix today? Like,
Oh yeah, because people generally speaking, I am a very positive, happy, wonderful, like very I do look on like the bright side of things in life. And it's not really necessarily a hard thing for me to do. But I had a nickname when I was working at as a project manager. It was called The Rage. That would I was nice until I wasn't. And so I decided to delve into Dark Phoenix because Jean herself tries to do this thing where like the Dark Phoenix is kind of like over here, right? And the Phoenix force is a force, right? Creation, destruction, but it is very much about the perspective of whomever is holding or hosting that energy, right? That's what colors it. And so in dealing with the Dark Phoenix, it's about me stepping into my own personal way of stepping into my own power, whatever that means, right? Because Scorpio is also a sign of extremes, right? So anyone who's ever been through the dark night of the soul, right? If you've ever been through the darkness, or you've ever been through like you've probably also been on the other side of that, which is the ultimate bliss side of it too, right? And so being able to feel those extremes, it can sometimes feel like a gift, it can sometimes feel like a curse, but that is our way of dealing with power, because power is power and you have to accept all of it, the darkness included.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so our first segment is actually on this power, psychic power
Yes.
for the Dark Phoenix, how that manifests, like the energy bolt side
Yeah.
of Wanda's power, and all of the mentality that goes into that, because their power is focused by their mind.
Okay. Thank you. So actually, wait a minute. I wanted to ask a first of all thing though, Wanda, Arya. So your lineage, Wanda. I always forget that Wanda's father, you guys, is Magneto. And Magneto is a prolific X-Men, right? And so if we think of Xavier as being a father figure to Jean, Magneto is kind of a father figure, well, is the father to Wanda, right? So can you explain how that maybe interplays to maybe Wanda's character? Do you think it matters?
Absolutely.
Because he's a villain, right?
I was actually thinking about this in contrast to Jean. So like, it's this thing. So I see it this way: if you were to understand the two creative forces in the universe, just for ease, the force of the masculine and the force of the feminine, we all have both, right? This is not like gender and sex. This is like the
aspects, energetic, yes.
Of something is what creates a battery, right? Like that is actually what creates power, positive, negative, yin yang.
Yes.
So, if Wanda is the pure manifestation of chaos, which is yin, or like Shakti, or like feminine power, that's all lovely, and you need structure. You need to be able to funnel that power into something. So structure comes from masculine side, for example. So Wanda, actually had to look this up on her lineage, so thanks for bringing this up. So Wanda's mother was also the Scarlet Witch, had some type of I think in the more like in the comics, the story is like the mom has died and they are Magneto's children, and Scarlett is a twin, so her twin is Quicksilver, Pietro.
Yes, yeah.
And they are close, but he is also kind of rash. He's like a little bit like Johnny Storm.
Yeah.
That kind of he's like
character type. Yeah.
So
Aries
she actually
energy.
has no stability, and like Magneto being like a megalomaniac has megalomaniac tendencies. So either he uses his children, pits them against people. So there's just not a lot of like there's no ground for her to root at any point in time. And so I think it makes for this like chaotic stuff. So Scarlet Witch's emotional trigger is her need to belong and her need for family, which is why when her imaginary when her construct children are taken away from her, it's when she fully breaks and then breaks reality for everyone else.
Yeah.
And then in some type of journey, she uses Agatha Harkness's help, and she meets the original Scarlet Witch, which is her mother. And I forget, her mother has her own sort of magical genius. And then she learns from her mother that the mother died because of Magneto, right? So you have a dad, you want family is important to you, but
then you find the truth of it, and you're just like, no, why?
It's not fun for her. So I think while she loves her father, and like her brother and her are really close, but they also heighten each other's kind of like negative tendencies, right? Like they support support each other's like righteousness and like violence at times, and they protect each other, but at the cost of like everyone else.
Yeah. Are they twins? They're twins?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. There's something to that then.
Yeah, and like she dies like once or twice in like a variety of different comics. So again, like it keeps like warping and breaking her, like poking at her like familial wound. Yeah. But speaking of lineage, like on your side, like you, Rachel, your dad was a prof.
Yeah. So
Ray's dad was a prof.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's.
So what's the dynamic there?
It's crazy too, because the more that you like, when you do research on these characters that you actually resonate with, because like as you said, like Arya, like you're like, I don't really care much about Jean Grey. I'm like, Wanda, I kind of do, or like, am I kind of do? Like, I don't really cosplay as characters that I don't necessarily. It's not like I don't like them, because Jean Grey I like was super annoyed with for a very long time, right? And then I was like, oh wait, the parts of her that I'm annoyed with, I kind of am a bit, right? And probably am annoyed in myself too, right? I need to like incorporate that. But like my dad was a professor, right? I guess he's retired now, but a professor in computer science. And so I found out that Jean Grey's dad is also a professor, was also a professor and was also Professor X's professor when Professor X was still, going to school and being a student. So there's this interesting thing there where I'm like, any of my dad's students, if you think that you're Professor X and you're out there doing comp sci things, you let me know if you're making Cerebro or something. But there's like some interesting commonalities there about being a teacher and an educator, and what that means also about like legacy, I guess, as it comes through like being a feminine embodiment of, so like feminine power versus masculine power, right? So even like as we see, when you look at women leadership, right? Like women bosses, it's not the same thing. And for us to maybe like look at it in the same way, I feel like comic books do a nice way of this. We can look at it in like an archetypal, symbolic perspective, and that's an easier way of us talking about it. So
and like, it's so funny. My friend and I are rewatching all the Lord of the Rings extended director's cut.
Yeah, that's a great rewatch.
This is like the 900th time
I'm
watching it, but after a long gap. And it's funny, I just realized that it's a very like male-centric production, and I was like, that's so funny. I literally never noticed this before, because.
What do you mean by male-centric?
Like there's like 99% of the characters are men.
Oh yeah. Oh that. Yeah. I get
right?
it.
Like there's like Arwen and Galadriel and Eowyn are like the only female characters, and there's like bunches of the Fellowship is all men.
Yeah.
And like, how amazing is that? Because I literally never noticed, because I never saw those characters as like outside of me. I was like, I want to be Gandalf. I want to be Aragorn. I want to be like Legolas. Like. I never felt this gap that, these are male characters. I don't understand. I can't relate. Like, I related to everyone. Like, even Gimli I related to, like in growing up. And so while, and like the characters there are so well fleshed out that like it speaks to those aspects in us. And I think it's kind of the same with Jean Grey, Dark Phoenix, and Wanda, because like every person, again, regardless of their gender, feels this maybe quiet power or like a part of them that feels like we're afraid of because it might control us, right? So like, actually I actually did want to ask you this. So like, how does the Phoenix Force work? Is this like a power, like Jean Grey is a conduit of the Phoenix Force? Is it something inside of her that she then directs, or does it like take her over?
So the interesting thing about Phoenix, and well, Jean Grey generally speaking, is I looked into Jean Grey. Jean Grey died. When they wrote about Jean Grey, her death changed the Marvel universe in comic books because they killed off a beloved character. She sacrificed herself for her friends because that's what Jean does. But what they ended up doing was they phoenixed her, right? So they created, they phoenixed her. Like, let's turn it to a verb, because that's like something I think thematically all of us are going through right now. This idea of, sacrificing yourself to yourself, and there is this level of like realizing, oh wow, I could do some really messed up shit with this power. Like I could really like it, like if you know how to, if you're an empathetic person, the dark side of that is of course you can manipulate people. Like if you know how to tell people are lying, guess what, you're probably a very good liar too, right? So all of these things are just like, oh, I can also wield this in a certain way, and just being aware of like, oh, and taking responsibility for that, and also just being aware of like not everything is so neat and nice and tidy uh, and cut and dry in terms of like what it means to be good and what it means to be bad. So all of that is tied up in like what it means to have the Dark Phoenix. And Jean Grey, like when they brought her back, I think this is where all the clones start coming into play too, where like it wasn't really Jean, it was like this other clone with like Phoenix attached to it. Uh, yeah, it possesses Jean Grey. Yes, or Madeline Pryor, and then all of that kind of stuff. I'm not. Voice of What actually helped me out a bit because we found out all of Jean's and like the X-Men's birth dates, because I was having a hard time trying to find the birth dates of everybody, but I have some very good detectives in here, and so we have them. And I found out that like Jean Grey was maybe born when I was conceived. Like it was just a strange like 84. But anyways, the point is that um as if you think of like a team, right? And we think of like old teams back in the day, you have like the girl on the team, and like she's like, and she originally started as being like the weakest one, and then they eventually like made her the strongest one. But it's not necessarily like Jean Grey. It's as the Phoenix that she is this very powerful force, which then sometimes goes like, well, I get out of control, and because I'm out of control, I can destroy an entire world. So what does that mean? Uh, in it, it's a matter of like it's interfacing with that entity, and not every individual can interface with the Phoenix.
Yes, as we learned, like Emma Frost was really not good at it.
And Cyclops is not very good at it either, actually.
Yes, yeah. And they had a fraction of what Jean had. So wait, so like the Dark Phoenix is an entity, it takes her over. So is Jean Grey directing where hits go, or is it the Dark Phoenix just doing things using her body?
That's a great question. I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's a little bit of both, because when I was reading the history of the Marvel Universe, right, there's the concept of the macabre crystal, and if there's a Spider-Man noir comic book where it's like this crossover idea of crossover genre between, let's say, like Indiana Jones and Spider-Man.
Oh, right.
Like if Spider-Man was an Indiana Jones, and he's like dark, and he goes to the Temple of Inanna, and in the Temple of Inanna he finds the macabre crystal, and within the crystal is this place called the White Hot Room. And the White Hot Room is this place within time space, and I'm not as familiar. I've been doing like some research now, and this is where like maybe you can help me a bit, Wanda, with like how you even constructed an entire reality, right? Because Phoenix is quite good at destroying worlds, not quite as good as creating worlds, actually, even though it is a force of creation. But creation in the force of Phoenix tends to be resurrection, right? Like beings coming back. Oh, Rachel Summers has the Phoenix Force from the future, and she controls it. Quick tip: the invoice of one are probably Rachel Summers and Cable from the future in a different form.
So cute. My voice of one.
But I'm not familiar with that. Like Rachel Summers is also Jean Grey's and Scott Summers' daughter from the future, who comes back into the past to teach the ethics of time travel. But yeah, so like I'm not as familiar with all. I need to do some more. I need to get some actual comic books that deal with that, because it would be fun to go into that more mythology of the more cosmic forces of the Marvel Universe. I'm not as familiar with them. That's all.
Yeah, so I couldn't find the equivalent of that for Wanda. So if anyone has that information that I wasn't able to find, but it's this thing, like Wanda doesn't, like aside from like her ability to shoot, you know, like her energy blasts, and like she can do shields and stuff, but her ability to change or like reality shift is a response and reaction to her overwhelming pain or panic or emotional discordance. So she isn't like, her emotions are sort of in control, and then it just sort of happens. So the actual mechanics of how it works is that an entity, like I think in the movies they explained it as an extension of the Mind Stone. In the comics, she is actually like born without the ability, but then like she's Magneto's child, so then she's part of an experimentation process, her and Quicksilver. So I've seen what, I forget which comic stream that is a part of, but in a different comic stream, she has to like she has the powers, they're dormant because like she's her mother's daughter, so she has Scarlet Witch abilities, but like they kind of, Magneto does something to like ignite them or turn them on, and it's like it's genetically encoded to her emotions. So it happens as an emotional reaction to something. So even though like her two sons aren't real, they are her construct. Like she constructed this family. Like she is capable of love. Like she married Vision, ironically, who is an android, but they split up because Vision lost his emotional capability somewhere along the Ultron timeline. And because he fully became android, not having any emotive or empathetic capabilities, so her and him split up. And then she created these children with him as part of her reality. She didn't adjust anyone else's, but everyone would interact with these children. And, that was kind of weird. And then something happened where they died or they dissipated, and she was in so much distress that Agatha Harkness came in, or Doctor Strange, one of them came in, and just sort of removed the memory, kind of the thing that Zatanna does, like just erase a painful memory for the better of everyone. Yeah. And then Wanda is like, fine. And then she's in some battle. Someone says something, does something, throws an energy blast her way, and then she remembers. And then her rage at everyone and all of this, like that anger when something has happened to you and you just want to burn the world. But again, she doesn't do that. She gives people what she wants. Like, if you're happy, then you'll leave me alone. And then that doesn't work. And then when they come after her, she revokes mutant abilities. So like what was millions of mutants on Earth goes down to like 200 mutants.
Oh wait, I think I remember this.
Yeah. So she just like revokes all mutant power, and then no one can find her or Quicksilver for like the longest time. And she strips Magneto of his powers as well. I think at some point she gets tired of everyone trying to control her. Magneto, Doctor Strange, Professor X, Emma Frost. So again, like, Scorpio has a very power and control like undertone around it, and she's like, no, so yeah, that's kind of, but again, it seems like she isn't really in control, and the one person who oddly defeats her is Rogue. Like, Rogue kills her in Uncanny Avengers. She stabs her in the back, but like there's a lot of anger. There's there's a lot of emotions, and everyone sort of projects their anger to Scarlet Witch, rightly or wrongly, but she kind of questions the X-Men a lot. She's like, you guys think you're heroes, but like you actually do whatever you want, and like they don't like to hear that. And Rogue, I think, blames her for like what's been happening to Professor X, to Magneto, and all of this stuff. And so to stop her, Rogue kills her.
Wow. It's crazy because Voice of One was saying in the chat that, like, technically, I guess Wanda is a mutant then, right?
Yes, technically.
Technically, like, if we classify her powers, I suppose.
Yes, she's a mutant. Like, I assume she'd show up on Cerebro, so yes.
Who is Wonder Man, Voice of One? I'm not as familiar. So he's saying that Wanda has a 3-way relationship with Wonder Man and Vision in the comic books. Are you familiar with?
She had a love triangle with Hawkeye and Vision.
Ooh.
That I knew, but Hawkeye's so weird in the comics.
There's There's more stuff with Egyptian myth, I feel like, with Hawkeye in the comic books, but I'm not as familiar with the mythology, so don't quote me on it. I'm not as familiar with the Marvel multiverse stuff.
Yeah. I'm not sure who Wonder Man is either. As far as I'm aware, there was a love triangle with Hawkeye, but Hawkeye is also like, I mean, I think the only emotionally stable person in like Avengers is maybe like Captain America, right? So like, and like nobody is him. So Hawkeye has his own stuff going
Wonder
on.
Man's
So like probably not the best love relationship for her. But again, this kind of, I think all of this, like not feeling safe, not having family, like she didn't grow up.
They're doing a Wonder Man live action in 2025.
Oh.
Yeah.
I may or may not watch that.
I know.
I'm liking Marvel cinematic content. And like, this is saying something. I watched the original 22, 23 movies multiple times, full arcs, like, I'm like, oh, this scene is from the cover of like this thing, like super into it. And these new ones, I'm sorry. No, I couldn't even get through Agatha all along. Like, I got through the first episode.
I'm not familiar with Agatha really at all as a character either.
Yeah, I mean, she's fine in the comics. She's not personally my most interesting, but I really like the actress who's portraying her in the MCU.
Okay.
And I don't even know what the story is, so I couldn't get into it. Yeah, so do you have any other audience comments?
Let's see here.
On your side?
Wonder Man is a robot turned Hollywood actor. Disney's making a TV show. Okay, yeah. He looks kind of like Johnny Cage from Mortal Kombat with like android eye things from anime. So I can see that.
Amazing. Thank you for all the hearts, everyone. Thanks so much. Thanks, Empathy's Last Dance.
Yay.
All right, so should we go into our second segment
Yes.
on construction, deconstruction, constructing?
Oh yes, let's.
So the thing with the Phoenix power is like as a mythical bird, the Phoenix is like embodies like the cycle of creation and destruction. So using Phoenix Force, can Jean Grey actually create things? Illusions or mental constructs within which she does it to heal people, right?
Yeah, so we were talking about this before about how like I'm not as well versed in this whole actual this is where like the different types of magics come into play, I think, right? So this whole idea of like burning it all in a big blob of fire, right? Let it all burn away. That's like kind of like my forte. Not quite as easy, maybe little sproutlings, the little starts, that might be okay. But I think where Phoenix Force gets most of its creation is through resurrection, right? So this concept of the sacrifice that's required in order for something anew to be be born anew from the ashes. However, there's not necessarily structure around it, right? So when we think about like birthing a new world, we're in like the Kali Yuga right now in terms of turning of the ages, and we think of new systems coming down and coming into play. But as things get built, I think it takes a different kind of magic to build like time, boundaries, like what that means to have space, time, and time space. Hey, thanks for the roses, Heaven Star. Hey. But yeah, so I think in the comic House of Wanda, Wanda says no more mutants.
Yes.
Okay.
Right at the end.
Okay,
yeah.
That's funny.
So that's her second creation. So the first thing she does is create a reality where everyone gets what they want. And it's actually really sad because you see everyone. So you see Spider-Man and he's like his
I'm gonna ask a logistic question. So when you're building out this construct, where in like the realm are we? Are we in like a higher density reality, like a dreamscape, or is it like off?
I think she can alter reality.
It's okay. That's some Dr. Manhattan-ish there.
Yeah. So when I remember when I was reading House of M, I'm like, oh, she created an illusion, but that's actually not her power. So like at one point when she does the no more mutants thing that someone just brought up, Emma Frost tries to use Cerebro and she finds like 100 mutants when there were supposed to be like 10 million mutants. So there are actually none. So like Magneto is like trying to like move metal and he can't. He remembers that he could, and then like nothing is moving. Like he can no longer move the electrons in the D. Like he just, that ability, she erases the mutant gene. She doesn't do it for every person because there's still, like, it doesn't impact Emma Frost, for example. I don't know why Diamond Shield, for whatever reason, but like it drops to like 100. The first time she, like, Gwen Stacy is like a dead person in the Spider-Man universe is alive. They're married. They have a child. And so everyone's and like you get to see Peter Parker like really enjoying, like he's like a teacher and he's really happy, and the person that remembers is Wolverine. He wakes up and he's like, wait, no, because he's old as hell and he's been around, and so he keeps trying to go wake everyone up and be like, listen, this isn't real. The last thing I remember was like trying to find Scarlet Witch. Why are we all here? Why are we all happy? And they find Hawkeye, who is dead, and he's alive, and then they start like remembering and trying to remember. And as I personally, this might just be a me thing. As I was reading House of M, I'm like, it's so interesting. Why can't he leave this alone? Everyone has what they want. Everyone's happy, right? And it's that thing because you're like, oh, maybe this is an illusion, this is a trick, but we don't know that at that point. And so Wolverine can't just accept it. So then they find her, they try, and she's all like, but I gave you guys what you want, leave me alone. And they keep trying to make her stop, which is when she says, no more mutants. And then there's this like, and then there's like, no more mutants.
That's so crazy.
It's so crazy. It's so crazy.
So I'm not as familiar with how, so like DC, I went into like a whole deep dive on like how the multiverses work, right? Crisis on Infinite Earths. You had multiverses. They all came down into one universe, and then they split off. And then we have now the New 52 and all of that kind of stuff, right? In Marvel, I'm not as familiar with like, are there much more, like we know like Earth 616 is like I think the main like universe, but like, is there like a map? Actually, I'm gonna look.
You can look.
I'm gonna look.
I am not sure if there's a map, but if I could be wrong, but I think House of M takes place in like normal Earth, and the fabric of reality is changed temporarily. Hi, Voice of One. Thank you so much for all your hearts. That's amazing. Aw, you guys. But yeah, actually, maybe Voice of One you might know. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird, like I'm saying, like, oh, she was super sad, and then like reality changed. But like again, Wanda has battled all sorts of like evil, horrible people and things. At no point has she ever used her power for that, right? Like it's never been used like against whoever like the evil people of Marvel are. Like she doesn't change reality to like make someone alive, like out of the goodness of her. Like I don't actually think she has control over it.
That's a great point, right? Like it's,
and like this kind of leads into the whole like, are you responsible for your creation? Because she isn't. It happens through her. But like, you know, you don't want to be in her radius. You don't even want to be on her planet if she's pissed off. Right? So,
that's true, yeah.
Is the same kind of true for Phoenix Force? Like, has she like destroyed like all sorts of everything?
Well, you know, like the comic book I have right now, Jean Grey's actually dead, and I think that's also why Wanda and Jean don't necessarily play in the same universe very often, is because timeline-wise, Jean is oftentimes gone by the time Wanda is part of like any of the storylines. So Jean with the Phoenix, it's like this idea of like there's a cost to resurrection, like what you're saying, like, well, I gave you what you wanted, right? So like, well, you're alive. Yeah, I gave you what you wanted. You're back to life, right? And reading this latest X-Men comic book, it's written by Joss Whedon, who actually also did Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Yeah, and in that show, there's one season where Buffy is brought back to life, and she literally gets brought back to life in her grave, and she has to dig herself out, and she's like, what the frick, like, why did you bring me back? So, like, it's because, like, well, we needed you, right? We needed the slave, but, like, no concept as to, like, oh, well, like, you resurrected me, but, like, maybe it was kind of, like, better where I was. You know, and so this idea, yeah, what does death mean? And this idea of, like, um, life at all costs is like a tricky thing as well. So yeah, when you're dealing with like very like cosmic primordial forces, that's what I'll kind of call it, because in Greek and Roman myth, when you think of gods like Eros, or you're talking about like love, which is like just it's a concept, right? And it's so hard. And so when you're talking about creation, destruction, nothing goes away. Nothing is things just always are, right? It's just like, where are you in time? And Phoenix just happens to deal with a lot of like 12th house stuff, which is like that in between of the darkness and like the first strike of the match, and and what it takes in order to have that happen. And yeah, it's crazy because like in terms of like building up the structures as you're like building up like anything new, I think when it comes to like Wanda and this, where it comes from like emotions, but still able to build a whole like mental construct with that, I think sometimes we don't realize how much our emotions are mental too.
Right. But like when Jean Grey is having a battle, like a psychic battle, like say with Emma Frost or someone else, they're fighting in a construct, correct?
Yes,
Right.
or like in like, I mean, I love how comic books show this, right? It's able to illustrate the fact that like, oh, this is happening on a realm in the same place, but in an upper density,
Yes.
right? And this
Right.
is my light body, which is now fighting your light body, and I'm
Yes.
using my psychic energies, which look like lightning or like
Yeah.
fire, or like what does fire symbolically mean, right? So if you even think about an element, what is fire? If you think of like, besides air, earth, and like water, like the fire is actually depends on all the other elements.
Yes.
If you
Yeah.
think about it.
Right. So Voice of Wanda says like Phoenix Force is an alien deity, like an
Yes.
alien entity, and Wanda's powers, thank you for naming them. It's reality warping probability powers is
Oh,
actually what
yes.
she has.
Oh my gosh. I wanted to bring, oh, that's a great point to bring up Voice of One, because I did a cosplay before I unveiled this cosplay of Black Cat, Felicia Hardy. Are you familiar with her?
Oh, yeah.
From Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So she actually has, she doesn't really have any powers, but she had something done to her, like an experiment where she ended up getting, like, she can give people bad luck.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
in DC, there's someone called 13 who can do that. She does. It's like bad luck magic.
but the way they explain it in Marvel is something the way like the you were saying Voice of One, where it's like a probability, quantum probability something, right? So she's able to just like, that's how the bad luck works. If she locks eyes with you, she can like project the probability that something more negative is going to happen by like adjusting things. So like when Voice of One's saying like, oh, you're adjusting things probability wise quantumly,
Yeah.
I feel like there's something there with like, I don't know, languaging it, of how you're able to build reality through those powers.
One of the things you mentioned, like this, 12th house stuff. So I actually did look up Wanda Maximoff's birthday, and
Ooh.
she's Aquarius, and
Okay.
today the moon is in Aquarius.
Weird.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? Like, because
I don't
like,
know
she
why.
doesn't have like psychic powers, but yeah, things like probability warping and that mechanism of bending reality, warping reality. And again, like warping might be like I don't mean it as a bad word, but like neutrally, that's her ability, right? So I feel like with Wanda's ability, she actually just like her, the gap between her as the creator and her experiencing her creation for Wanda is like, it's so close, it's here. Like she's the creator and she's experiencing her creation, whereas for a lot of us, there's like a bit of a gap,
Yeah.
like between actually like, oh, I'm gonna like do some work today, and then that work will get done after a few hours or after a few days, and then I can like reap the benefits of it, like farming, right? Like after a season or so. But for Wanda, she creates a reality and then she's in it, and then she lives it.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's so instant. And like at some point in like the new earth, like when we all realize that we all have this power, like today it's maybe dormant, and maybe it's a good thing that we don't have it, because like God knows like what awful Scarlet Witch like things we would create, just be like, oh, these people gone, those people gone, like just it actually reminds me of like the Thanos snap, right? Like and this actually brings me to like one of the things I wanted to talk about is like that sense of righteousness. Like for my family, I'm doing this. For the people I love, I'm doing this. And so I'll like destroy a whole bunch of people's lives, and somehow it's right because we come from this false sense of righteousness. And for me, this is actually like a thing that I'm sorting right now. It's where I feel like because I'm spiritual, I'm correct and like you're wrong. Therefore, I can't allow for your reality, basically. So I have to warp it in some way. Otherwise, I don't feel safe to be here. And like this ability that Wanda has, like for me, is like an accountability sentiment around if I'm here, and if I want to be like open-hearted and all of this stuff, I actually have to accept your very different reality, and I have to remember that it does not. It's not a personal attack against me. Like your opinion, your thought, your belief is super different, and we don't face that with our friends, but we face that with people who might not be our friends, right? Like just other people, other opinions, and it's like all of the stuff makes the world. So for me, this like Aquarian side is like really like Wanda's Aquarian side is challenging this notion in like this week for me of how much of opposite I accept, and when I don't, it's like I'm having Wanda level emotions.
Well,
If that makes sense.
I do love how they did Vision in the movies, right? And the interaction with him and Wanda, because what I do get from Wanda, like I haven't watched House of M, I'm not as familiar with Wanda from that regard, but I do that I don't want to call it a trope because it's not a trope. It's more about what happens with women who are very powerful magic users, right? And I was telling you this about how like it doesn't matter if she's a very powerful psychic or if it's like she can tell the future. Whenever it's any of these magical powers, she's a witch, and burn her at the stake. Because Jean gets called a witch, and like a red-headed witch, and like Wanda's like the Scarlet Witch, right? And so Scarlet, right, red, this idea of like that root chakra and like the foundation, like the unseen power, right? The power that's not like in front of the spotlight, but rather the power of like who's holding the spotlight, and like who's like all the stuff that goes on to make a show work, that is all behind the scenes. And I come from like when I was going to high school, I did drama a lot, right? And so in a lot of our classes we did everything. Like if you did like your little show, you were just performing, but you had to then also do lights for another group, or you had to do like the stage for the other group. So like you see like all the world's a stage, right? And so if we are all coming into our own powers, right, and we look to different character archetypes as far as how to like visualize what it's going to mean to like actually have that be experienced in real life, like that's where like having these fun conversations are great, Aria, right? Because when we're saying like, okay, I'm creating a whole reality for you, like what else is like an RPG game, or if you're playing a video game with like other people where you're like, okay, these are the parameters, this is the reality we're going to play for like about like 2-3 hours, and for a moment I'm going to be this, and I'm going to and but you have a game master, right? You have someone who is the narrator, someone who's like holding all of it, and it's not necessarily control, but it's still a very powerful position.
Right.
And so
like the architect.
yeah, kind of thing. But like sometimes it's like this level of like once, like even if you're doing like a short play, and you and your friends are like, okay, I'm gonna make a little play, and I'm gonna write us all some parts. Like we were gonna try to do a little part with like Scarlett and Jean and stuff. But like so we do the script and we like make the whole plot, and then as we're acting it, even though I wrote it, I'm gonna pretend like I don't know what's gonna happen next.
Yeah, you get surprised.
Yeah, I'm surprised, even though like I wrote it, I know what's gonna happen, right? So I feel like we do this thing as well when it comes to like probabilities, right? And this idea of sometimes it's a level of what you want at that time. You on a higher level know that's not what you want yet, so you go through this like I don't know, side quest thing. Yeah, so it's not as linear and as we deal with it. I think there's also a level of when we do let things get out of hand, just taking responsibility for when everything does burn down.
So in a really weird and roundabout way, this is also kind of bit by week. So the news, so I really loved Witcher, and I never read the books, but I know the game a little bit more, especially the third one, Wild Hunt. I didn't play it. I watched my cousin play it. So
that's so fun.
I was very involved in the watching of someone else play the game. I'm terrible at actually playing.
That was like me and BioShock.
Sorry?
There's a game called BioShock. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. It's super creepy and super like ominous. It's about like it's like Atlantis. I don't know, and it's like this really dystopian. But I can't play it. I watched just Kevin play it. Anyways, you go on with Witcher. Yeah, but.
So one of the things. So Witcher 3 came out earlier this year, and like I didn't think it was really great. I really liked the actors and the characters, but I was.
You mean the show, right?
Actually, I was looking for all the Scarlet Witch stuff, and someone had a funny title complaining about The Witcher. So I went on this 2-hour binge of people breaking down why the second and third season of Witcher were so horrible, making comparisons to like the source material in the book as well as the source material in the game. And like, obviously, right, like Witcher was beloved like even 4 years ago before the Netflix show came out, just because the books had their whole thing, and then the games, because the games are amazing. So the obvious things is like, oh, you had these two massive areas of source content. Like, why did you create this like nonsensical thing that doesn't actually make sense? Like, you made the character weird, and then you had to rush through these episodes to make that right. And I was watching all of those, and I was kind of agreeing with some of what they were complaining about. But I love this thing that you said, right? Like, the author who created the book was one person who had a vision. He created the book. Video games are obviously created in a very different format, and so certainly you have to like adapt certain things and move certain things. And then movies or shows in this case also very, very different, and something that is literary or works in a game may not work in a movie. And the way creation happens, the construct, the medium, and the context is also really like all of that really plays into it. So one of the content creators complained that the writer or the director of the Witcher season, like the Netflix show, they did this post where they complained that, oh, we have to make Witcher really simple because like it's the TikTok generation and they don't have they don't have mind span, they don't have attention span, so we kind of have to make it dumb. Is what they said.
This is a very condescending way to like,
right?
yeah.
Like, what an awful dumb thing to say. B, like this show, it was popular well before you even wanted to make a Netflix show.
Exactly.
Like
that's true. Yeah.
Popular.
Yeah.
And it's like you don't know your audience. You don't really care, and like you are creating something from your own view. And it's like not landing with anyone. Like even people who didn't, like neutral people who didn't read the books, didn't like, play the games. Like if you actually watch the show unto itself, like there's no consistency even within the show. Like, I'm a character, I push you, and then you go flying in one episode, and the next episode you like do, and then I fall over. Like, it's not consistent. And I was like, wow. And it's kind of that, I know the comics and like this happens in mutant related content as well. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting from a creator perspective. Like, Jean's medium is the astral plane. Apparently, Wanda's medium is reality.
That's, you know what? That is a great way to put. That's a great way to put it. That's a great way to put. And let's see here, Austin. Hello, welcome, and thank you for the follow, Rachel. You have a great name, by the way. I love what you said about that because it's because really why I revisited comic books in the first place was because, of course, I'm like writing Dragon Warriors, right? And it's so funny because like Phoenix for creation, destruction. What does it mean to build a world, to destroy a world? And I was reading about an author about how like when they were writing a certain character, how it feels like, and I know what this is like when you kill a character off, or let's say Krypton like being destroyed, or like just it's like these things happen where like you as the creator of the story are destroying aspects of that story in order to tell the story, right? So it's like there's this interesting or like certain deaths or sacrifices that happen so that things can kind of move forward and in time. So but I love what you said about like Wanda almost being like it's this realm, because even thinking about her father being Magneto, that's very like earth magic energy,
Metal,
right?
yeah.
And metals, and like the magic of all like what that is in like harnessing the earth and like what it means to be on this earth plane.
And her brother is Quicksilver, which is Mercury's name, right?
Oh yeah.
So,
There's some.
Yeah, so it is very like periodic table. Abby's Last Dance, thank you so much for sending a gift, and Nirushan, thank you for following us today and joining us.
Yay,
Appreciate you guys.
Yay.
Oh my god, this stuff is like really like. Actually, it's bizarre. Like, as I was watching all this Witcher stuff, the thing I was thinking of was Dragon Warriors, and I'm like, oh, like now I can see what could and could not translate into a show. Something that works really well in literature.
Would you make a scene? Like, does it need a scene? Does it need like does this? And also
Exactly.
like video games specifically are like what you're saying about The Witcher is like how I feel about Halo, in terms of like the game adaptation
exactly.
of where it's like the game, and you know this from watching gameplay, like when you're designing a game story, like what parts of the game are playable, what parts are cutscenes, what parts, like where does the level end, and like I like to relate like Astro to like the game of life. Like we're all like playing a game, right? And like what we're even doing right now like is like you're like meeting up with all your other people on the quest and like gathering intel, like sharing your maps before you like go on to the next stage of the journey and stuff like that. But games are meant to be interactive, so you need to write the story in such a way that happens. Whereas movies, like when Borderlands was created as a movie, me and my sister played Borderlands 3. Like we loved Borderlands 3, but we were like, you need to literally you need to create a story for a movie format, because the game does not have a story. It's literally just mayhem and shootings and like looting things, and like it's not really like a cohesive storyline. So for you to actually have it be in that format, you need to just like set a good story in that universe.
Yeah, totally. So I think one of the I think it's Age of Ultron and Apathy's Last Dance. Yeah, right. Like Quicksilver, Mercury. Like it's such a thing. She just said like, oh, never thought of it. But I think in the Age of Ultron timeline, there's this scene with Pietro, and I actually really like Pietro and Wanda's scenes, especially like in the House of M story arc, right? Because like everyone's trying to like control Wanda, and like Pietro, like Quicksilver, he's not trying to control her, but in an attempt to protect her, he also just like makes, everyone's making decisions for her, because she's like either catatonic or sad or locked up in a room somewhere or is like warping reality. So in Age of Ultron, happen, like some epic destruction. So they're like holding each other, and he's like, I'm always gonna be there for you. It's this really like protective, brotherly vibe. And then this like bullet comes out of nowhere, and then like later you find out that Ultron has sent it, but because he's Quicksilver, he just like very quickly moves out of the way.
Yeah.
Gets hit.
Oh.
And she dies. Like, she dies in his arms. So, like, it's like a very, like, it's interesting, right? You're like, I'm gonna protect you, and then, like kind of without thinking, his reaction is to move. Maybe he pushed her too, but, like, he moves very, like, the only person who's there to protect her, which is Quicksilver, just moves too fast.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And, like, and, you know, when we think of, we all want, like, our dreams to instantly manifest, and to me, that's, like, the Quicksilver part, right? Like, he's super fast, he's, like, the Marvel version of Flash, but, like, in his speed, the actual, like, rebirth slowness is missed out, and that's not his fault, but, like, there's this level of, like, sweetness and brother-sister vibe, but, like, they actually, in a way, can't help each other.
Yeah.
Because their powers manifest really differently, and so their dynamic is so sweet and so interesting and so lovely. And from my perspective, whenever I see those moments, I'm like, this is Wanda's wound of not having family, right?
Yeah. And I think that's a common mutant thing, right?
Yes.
And I think
but, like, I mean, people have it to lesser degrees. Like, Rogue has, you know, like, her touching things, so she wasn't accepted, but, like, they all come to Xavier's school and, you know, have friends, have family, but, like, that wasn't Wanda's upbringing. Although, I think I mentioned this to you, I found this cute, like, illustrated comic where, like, Wanda's walking and she's all by herself, and I think she's just, like, new to Xavier's school, and Jean Grey is, like, walking down, and she's like, you should get more clothes. And they're, like, they have this clothes shopping thing, and Wanda keeps picking red stuff, and Jean's like, that color looks great on you. And Wanda's like, it's my color. And, like, I don't know who drew this, and I'm like, I cannot believe this is a scene in a comic. But, like,
I love that. Great. Well, I mean, I feel like Jean and Wanda would be kind of like that big sister, little sisters, like, kind of archetype situation. If you look at their birthdays, I think Wanda's is 89 and Jean's is 84.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I think Jean's actually kind of born when you're kind of born close. But I think she's a Scorpio. I think that's what we found out. Let me double check too. Voice of One send me all of... Yeah. But where are we with our segments?
I think we're done all our segments.
Did you want to try a battle, my friend?
Sure. I'm very new to TikTok Live still. I do them, but never in this format.
Well, I feel like I just want to try because I've been having DC versus Marvel. Oh, do we have a choice between, like, do you have a favorite between DC or Marvel, Aria?
DC.
Yeah. Do you? Okay, hold on. You know what?
No, okay, sorry. I should clarify. I really love the DC animated universe. Like, everything that comes out, at worst, I enjoy it. It's like it's quite pleasant. Whereas, like, Marvel got a bit, like, Hollywoodized.
Yeah.
And I think that's now coloring my perception of when I go back to the comics.
Well, that is what happens, right? Like, anything, like, all of these mediums, like, have, like, a feedback loop onto each other, right? Even us, as we interface with them, we have power over it too, right? Like, as you, like, because you add to, like, your dream world and your imagination adds to it too. I agree with you on that. I choose DC too, actually, overall.
Right?
Like, yeah.
I mean, there's just some, like, I will watch every Batman movie that ever comes out. Like, I mean, I'll like it, but I will watch it. But I will not essentially watch Loki or Agatha Harkness or...
Well, I mean, like, I feel like the problem is that, like, they keep on just trying to reach and make the universe bigger instead of going deeper with the characters. Right?
Yes.
Like,
like,
why don't you have Jean and Cassandra Nova? And, like, the reason why Jean beats Cassandra Nova is this. She gives Cassandra Nova empathy. And then so Cassandra Nova finally feels all the horrendous ish that she did and then makes atonement. So it's like a different way of fighting that she goes about it. But
like that is such a specific power that Jean has that stems from her empathy. And Cassandra Nova is the twin of Charles Xavier.
yes, but it's like a weird thing. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but Cassandra Nova is like almost like this other entity that like exists in the womb with Xavier, and like like builds herself a body using the genetic code, like stealing it off of Xavier. I'm not. Something. It's
kind of looks like him, right? She's
yeah.
Like bald and creepy.
she's really creepy in the comic book. She's actually in my current comic book right now. She's actually behind helping Emma get her secondary mutation of the diamond shield in it. She's like,
shield,
she's like, I hope you like diamonds.
Sure. Actually, when I was looking through like House of M, so Rachel and I did a cosplay at like Rachel was Jean Grey and I was Emma Frost, and then we kind of realized how, because I've always related really strongly to like Emma Frost, like the Ice Queen, the White Queen, sort of that guarded nature, and how her psychic powers are this mental guarded, almost like mental projections, and Jean's manifest really differently. And like it's so funny because like in House of M there's like 4 discussions of what to do with Scarlet Witch, and Emma's only dialogue is like, we should just kill her. Like, just get this over with. And I was like, what the hell, you have no empathy. I wish Jean was here.
But like it's all and it's funny because like oftentimes like Jean, they're almost separated by timelines, these characters.
They are, because I think in House of M, Jean's dead.
Yeah, like Jean's usually dead in many of the things.
Jean Grey usually.
Yeah, and it's usually like flashback sequence, or like a memory, or a clone, or Madeline Pryor is at it again, or like it's Phoenix, but like not really, kind of.
Yes.
So.
For sure. Okay, so you wanted to do a battle, so what
Yes.
does this mean?
So I'm going to log off of the stream because the battle won't make sense. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody who's been watching us on Beam and Odyssey and Rumble. Thank you so much. If you want to catch us on TikTok, I will have our links to our TikToks in our descriptions as well.
Thank you for joining us, guys.
For sure.
TikTok folks, thank you for staying here. We
Yes.
are